we're here. I know we late. Mind your business. No, it's late. Like we get here when we want to. I'm just kidding. We were just trying to get ready, and I'm really excited to be here again with Terry.
Hey.
And and now we have Susie Bell, our guest, Susie Bell, and we're gonna talk about her journey from Mormonism to now, and her just her journey during her spiritual life, and get to know more about her. She's an amazing woman who's very talented and gifted, with a book coming out, and we're talking about her book cover now. And so we just want to get you to know and love this beautiful woman that we have gotten to know and love behind the scenes. So Susie, I want to ask you, before we even get into who you are, like what even interested you? Why did you feel the courage to come and visit with us? Because I know there was something on your heart that you really wanted to share, and that you wanted to share it with others. And that's why you have the message, and that's why you chose to even write a book, But what is it that even made it possible?
Thank you. That is a great question. I think any time that we're transitioning in life, no matter what it be, anytime that we are making changes, it is so frightening. And especially growing up in a high demand religion where we are told this is the way that it is and there is no other way, and we don't question any other way. When we begin to question and we begin to have those ideas, it is frightening. And many times we're discouraged from speaking and we're told it's bad and wrong. And so there's a lot of shame associated with us even questioning. And I'm sure that there will be a lot of people watching where I was 10, 15 years ago, where I was curious, but I was terrified, just terrified.
And I guess I'll go ahead and open up to your upbringing. And I don't know if you want to start with who you were or who you are now, but maybe a little bit about how would you have described yourself, who you were in, because it's about having that oppression and this lifestyle of beliefs that kind of makes you feel not really even, it makes you feel like you're not really even close to God, or you're not, a part of his beautiful creation, but that you have to suffer. And we're all like starting off as little slime, and we gotta be earning our place with God. But
Yeah. I was born and raised in the church, and my heritage goes way back through the pioneers, way back to the restoration of the church. And so I was born into a family where I didn't know that there was any other way to believe. And we believed that everyone outside of our religion was simply outside of it because they hadn't heard about the wonderful news, the wonderful gospel. And so growing up, I was so indoctrinated that I didn't even understand, again, that there was another way. And I was raised to get married in the temple, have as many children as I could, not focus on education. I was going to be a wife and a mother. That was my most important role in life. And that is what I grew up believing and wanting. And as I started to tell my parents about different ideas that I might have, it was quickly squashed. It was, that is not what our Father in heaven wants us to do. Being a journalist is not where you're supposed to be. And so I was encouraged that if I did go to college, I should pursue nursing or education, roles that were more appropriate for a mother to have, since that would be my role. And that is exactly the path that I followed. I did everything the way that I should. And I think that there's something to be said about this obedience, because you hit on something, Erica, when you said um, something about my entire identity was obedience. My entire identity was about being obedient. And I was worthy of the love of God if I did the right things. But if I didn't, that worthiness would not, I was not worthy. And it's interesting how so many of us, particularly women, we're praised for what we do and not who we are. And we're never allowed to pursue our own ideas of what we are or what we want to be, particularly in this age group. And I'm 54, but I find that many women, whether they were religiously indoctrinated or not, we really didn't, it wasn't ingrained in us to really pursue much for ourselves. And in my case, I was actually told that if I did, it would be very selfish. And so I went on to become a nurse and a nurse practitioner after I got married. Well, a nurse after I got married, which was kind of uh, unusual to get an education. And I went on to have 6 children. And it wasn't until after the birth of my 6th child that I began to start to think that maybe my life had a little piece, a little part for me in it too. And that's what my book is called, is A Piece of Me, because I realized I wanted a piece too. Everyone else got a piece, the church got a piece, husband got a piece, the kids all got a piece, and I wanted a piece too.
How long ago did your transition start? Like when did you leave? Right? How long ago?
I officially left in 2012. That's when I was actually excommunicated from the church. But the ideas in my head started around 2004, where I just thought, I just wasn't happy. I was not happy. But the excommunication, that happened 12 years ago.
But there was just this part when you're saying how you grow up that I find beautiful and fascinating, because as people who are of different religions, right, we see that most religions are basically saying everyone is going to hell if you don't do what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes offensive to people who aren't in church or who quit going or who have moved to this different point of the stage. It becomes this place where we become offended, right? But
Mm-hmm.
what I noticed that you said was that you felt like people just didn't know who God really was, and they just hadn't heard the message yet. And so when we hear people say, have you heard the good news? And you're like, get out of here. Even Jax was saying how she got a letter, a handwritten letter, and it was an invitation to church. And in our minds, like, we might think like, oh, this seems kind of hokey. It seems kind of weird that the person is doing this, because I've received those kinds of letters too. But the thing about the person is there's a person who really believes that you need the message, and they believe that you need the word, and that you don't know it. And in their hearts, like, they're just trying to fulfill their role as someone who loves God to connect with other people and help them connect with the love of Christ, right? And so there's this innocence behind it. There's a genuine, actual love for humanity, along with what we've witnessed in the past. Most of us is the judgmental side, but sometimes I think we have to think about the fact that there are people who have different beliefs, and they really genuinely do love God, and they have their own type of relationship, even if we don't necessarily like the way that they do it or express it, that you really were this person who truly just was living to try to love God the best way you could.
Yes.
And I think that's where the tolerance for me comes in, is understand that there are people who genuinely, they don't know they're stepping on your toes or offending you or triggering you for your past trauma. They just really love God. And I think it's amazing too that you said, I know I'm long-winded, y'all, and I'm gonna get this out.
No, you're good. This is good.
To point out these little things that maybe get missed, and I'm like the little person that digs, so that you you grew up in a family that was poly. So did you have more than one mother, sister, wife type thing exposed to you?
No, so my whole family back to, Joseph Smith time, they were polygamists. And so the last polygamist in my family was my great grandfather, who crossed the plains
Oh,
and helped to establish Salt Lake City in Utah. So he came across the plains,
wow.
and then the Mormon church, not the fundamentalist Mormon church, the fundamentalists broke off from mainstream Mormonism because they wanted to continue to live the higher law of polygamy. And so those are the ones that you will see that continue to practice polygamy to this day. As far as mainstream Mormons, most of us have come from polygamy. Most of us. In fact, I found out at my wedding that my husband and I were distant cousins because of polygamy. It was the craziest thing, but I wasn't surprised. So
Yeah.
you have cousins everywhere, and the family tree is mind blowing in the Mormon Church because so many of us are related as a result of the history of polygamy. But in my family growing up, I had, just a single mom and dad. And
Oh,
we believed, though, that in the hereafter, in the celestial kingdom, polygamy will be practiced. It is the higher law. So even though we were raised knowing that in this life we would have one husband, we knew that in the hereafter, uh, our husband would have many wives, not just us. And for a lot of women, that was really disturbing. And what we were told is, "You just have faith, just have faith." But it was something that a lot of women still, and something that I struggled with because my husband was the love of my life. I didn't want to share him if I was going to be obedient and do everything right. And so, yeah, polygamy, it's in my family history. But as far as polygamy here now, the Mormons believe in following the laws of the land, and so that was the main reason that that was taken out.
right, right. And it's still a struggle because I guess a lot of people are struggling versus man's law versus God's law.
Hmm.
And in a place where we have so many different religions, it's like, it's supposed to be a separation of church and state, but it's still something. Wow. But now at least I understand better. I understand better where you're coming from. I don't know, Terry, if you had any questions, but I just was going to ask, so was your husband chosen for you, or did you get to, is it something where you guys lock eyes and meet and you like, oh my God, I think I like him? How does it work?
So you are raised to marry within your own faith. We were strongly discouraged from dating anyone outside of the faith. And I met my husband when I was 15, and I thought he was the hottest thing, and he was just so cute. He was adorable. One of my sons looks just like he did when he was 15, and he was the cutest kid. And he lived in a trailer park, and my parents were really, really upset with me because his family did not meet that standard Mormon. His mother had been married 4 times. They didn't want me dating him, but I saw in my parents that they didn't seem to be like terribly in love, and I wanted to be loved, and I wanted that romance, and I just wanted to be desired and loved. And there was something about him I saw at that time that I just fell in love with, and I knew that, hey, this guy's legal, he's Mormon, we can get married in the temple. and and I never saw anybody that I had that attraction to. And I mean, I just like m- zeroed in on him, and I was just in love with them. But I knew that I never could go outside of my religion. And so within that small pool of people that I had to date, he was the guy. He was the one. And I had my mind made up from the age of 15. So he wasn't chosen for me. In fact,
Wow.
kind of quite the opposite. I was discouraged from it. But it was also kind of one of those things where I had been told my whole life everything I was going to do. And this felt like the first choice I got within the confinement of where I was. So it was kind
Mhm.
of my first taste of, I'm going to do what I want to do with
I,
still
I,
following all the rules.
How,
yeah,
how,
yeah.
how old were you when you got married?
I was 20.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. So he
So,
had to serve a mission for the church. So he had to go away for 2 years and serve a mission. And then we had to be worthy to get married in the temple, which meant we could not have had any sexual relations with each other or with anyone else, including like masturbating, including pornography. We had to be absolutely worthy to be able to enter into the temple, to be sealed for time and all eternity. And we both were straight little arrows. So it was a match made in heaven,
mhm. For Mormon heaven.
Mormon heaven for sure. Yep.
I, I think it's a beautiful story because it's different from what we hear. But like you say, it's like mainstream and it's not like fundamentalist.
Right.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so it's but it is still beautiful. And I know I was curious how old were you when you went to nursing school? So because I mean it's luckily of things that women can do. Women can be teachers and women could be nurses. And what was the other thing that they could do? You
Well, I
said,
wanted to be a journalist, but I was really discouraged. My mom said that
wow.
just really isn't something that is going to vibe well with having children. That's just not. She The idea of college was to only have to work if we were widowed or if our husband was unable to provide for the family. But our job was to stay home. But if we had that backup, I was always encouraged to have that backup in case, not in the case of divorce, because that wasn't really an option, but in the event that I had to provide for my family. And so I was always worried about needing to provide for my family because my mom had grown up in such poverty. And I do remember times within my mom's marriage that she would say to me secretly, she would say, I would leave your dad if I had an education. And I would just think, oh my gosh, is that why we have to stay? Like, this guy is so mean. And so I I never wanted to feel trapped and stuck because I think I knew what I was, she would express how it felt to her, and I never wanted to feel like that.
I think that speaks for a lot of us coming
Mhm.
from I guess I guess that's the world, right? Isn't it,
Mhm.
Terry? Kind of like I guess that's why women are becoming so empowered over the 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s is because we didn't want to be trapped and
Yeah.
uh
Yeah.
and it's still all over the world where places where people can't exactly go get education. But I'm just grateful because I think wow, you at least being a nurse, that's a powerful education that you had. That's a powerful tool because usually like women they become a nurse, especially when you become an RN. That used to be like the thing to do if you were gonna go get a job, become a nurse, and you knew that you could
Yeah.
make good money and support yourself and make it in
Yeah.
the world.
And
Um,
I graduated nursing school when I was 24. So I had my first baby during finals week of nursing school for during my first final. And I remember my instructor, she told me that I had failed her class because that was back before cell phones where I could call her and let her know. And she said, you failed my class. And I disputed it because I said, look, I had a baby. I'll show you a birth certificate. And she said, well, you could have had your husband call me. And I thought,
oh,
so that all worked out. But I graduated from school at 24, pregnant with my second baby. So I really do think it was my mom's sense of feeling trapped that it didn't matter what it took. And I was always told too growing up, like once you get married and once you start having kids, you'll never go to school. So make sure that you
yeah.
definitely do this. And it was almost like I'll show you. I'm going to do this. I never felt smart enough. I never felt capable enough. I was never really praised by my family. And so I think it was just kind of proof to myself that I did maybe have two brain cells to rub together. And then when I graduated, I still didn't feel smart. I still second guessed myself. And it was, it was challenging because you grow up um, in a very patriarchal family where my dad was smart. And I don't think he really connected with his daughters at all.
Was he
I think,
smart? Like you're saying he really was smart, not that
well, he had a
the
master's
rule is that
degree.
dad is smart, whether he is or not.
Yeah.
Like,
And my
yeah.
mom would always tell us how smart he was and say, your dad has a master's degree. He's so smart.
Okay.
But we as girls, we never felt like there were three girls before my brother was born. And he doted over my brother. And my brother was just kind of like, this one's gonna carry on my name. And as girls, we were not
Left
really
out.
praised for anything other than just obedience to the church. There was never that. I never felt smart. I always felt very
Yeah.
dumb growing up.
Well, and
And I
then
think
too, they kind of raise us in a way where we feel that's not our job to be smart.
right.
So it's not something that you get praised to do. I know I'm gonna splurge some information. Anyway, someone told my son, I'm not gonna say who, but my son likes to get people to play chess, and the lady told my son, girls don't play chess. And I was like, let me send you a message. Don't you ever tell my son that,
Yep.
because I don't want my son to grow up to be a pig. You know what I mean? Like, and he was maybe about 7, and this woman told him that, and I was like, get your friend because she's special ed. Like, you don't tell boys that. We're trying to be against that, not trying to promote stuff like that.
Right.
So, I mean, do you feel that the upbringing with your religion, like, did it make you feel as though you were not going to live very long, and like there's just nothing to plan for? Because you seem so driven, like you seem to be driven in the opposite direction of I'm going to do it to defy the odds, versus feeling as though you were being like, we're all going to die and go to heaven anyway. We're just going to be worried about the hereafter. I got my
Well,
husband and my babies, and we're going to just.
right. And I think the older I got, as I started realizing, like, and my children started growing, kind of like in that picture that I sent
Oh,
you of my young family, the thought started to cross my mind, what if the second coming, meaning the return of Christ, doesn't happen during my lifetime? What if he doesn't come? And because we were always told that we were the chosen generation, but then they were telling my children they were the chosen generation. And my dad had been told that they were the chosen generation. So I started about this time thinking, what if that second coming doesn't come in my lifetime? What if I see all these other women in the world in their 40s and 50s starting to do things, like Martha Stewart developed her first business at the age of 50. And I started seeing that around me and thinking, there might be more to life than just being a wife and mother, because in so many years my last child is going to leave the house, and what will I have then? This husband who I'm struggling. I mean, I loved him at 15, and I loved him for years and years into our marriage. But as problems started to arise, and with the death of our fourth baby, our marriage changed. And I wasn't so in love with him anymore. And I wasn't feeling connected to him. And I started questioning, is this the person I want to be with forever and ever and ever, and be one of his multiple wives in the hereafter in the celestial kingdom? So these questions started to come up. And Erica, I think it's really interesting that you mentioned about the chess, because in my home too, we were told, we didn't do sports, we didn't do this, we didn't do that. And I was never good at anything. And so it was this time in my life that I decided, I want to be good at something. I want to do something for me. And that's when I started the bodybuilding, because I felt like it was something that I could control. And there was nothing in my life that I felt like I had any control over. And so this was in 2009 And I had been bodybuilding at that point for, let's see, I started 2005 was my first show. Started working out in 2004. So this was 4 years after I began bodybuilding, and I won this overall competition. And there were other competitions I won, but it gave me the first incredible sense of accomplishment that I'd ever had in my life. And my husband was mad at me for doing this and exposing my body. And I was really discouraged from doing this. There was no support from him. He was angry at me.
Wow.
But yeah, but I
You were,
felt
let me tell you something. You were good at something, girl, because you are smoking. This is after you had like your fourth child?
sixth after my sixth baby.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. That's all I had was six. And when he was one was when I started working out. And then when he was two, I competed in my first show. My first show, I took fifth. And I was so excited because there's 5 places. And the fact that I got a trophy, I was just elated. And then you're
Wow.
kind of like, if I can do my first show and I can get fifth, I'm going to try another one. And then I got second. And then with this one,
Wow.
I was so excited to win overall. I wanted to take that sword home to my kids. That was like the coveted Excalibur sword. If anyone's familiar with bodybuilding, they know about that sword. And I was ecstatic to just take
I'm
that
gonna
home
blow
to
it
them.
up. Wow, look at that sword. Wow. Is that
Yeah, it's
Damascus steel? I just learned about Damascus steel. Wow. That's
and
amazing.
there's a story about that sword that was funny because when I won the overall was for ages 35 and over, and then all of the classes in that is the overall. And then I won 18 and up in my height category, but I didn't win the overall in my 18 and up group. So 18 years and up, I won just in my height class. And so the producer came backstage after I won, after I had a hold of that sword, and he said, "Hey, we need that sword back because it's not for the masters overall. Basically, it's not for the old ladies. It's for the 18 and up
Oh,
overall." And I said, "Are you kidding me right now?" And he said, "No." So I had to give it back to him. And I just remember thinking, okay, I finally arrived, and overall it was fine, but it's just kind of a funny story because I always felt like things were just being ripped away from me as soon as I got them or accepted them. Kind of like,
almost
with
like
these
take it out of my cold dead hands, dude, because you're not getting
exactly.
this sword back.
So exactly. And it's just kind of one of those things where in my book I talk about that's how I felt when my baby died, and that's how I felt with other things. And I think a lot of women feel that way. We feel like we worked our whole lives for something. We invest everything we have in a marriage or in a church or in a career or whatever. And then it's ripped away. And the beauty in life is that regardless of what is ripped away from us, we are such intelligent beings as women that we know how to rebuild. We know how to rebuild, and it's a beautiful thing.
That's absolutely remarkable. You had said that you had four. Were you saying that you had four babies that miscarried, or was it your fourth child, that fourth one that passed? Um, I just wanted to get that
Yeah.
right.
I had with my fourth baby, I had some it's called a subchorionic hemorrhage, or it's just basically a tear in your placenta. And I bled my whole pregnancy from week 9 until she was delivered at week 26, and I was hospitalized during that time. Now the first 3 babies before her, piece of cake. I mean, I just popped him out, and my Mormon doctor told me, "You were meant to have children, Susie."
Mhm.
So, yeah. And so with this baby, it was really strange because I just had this unusual bleeding and it wouldn't stop. And I had an incredible amount of pain. And so my doctor in the 90s was giving me a significant amount of opioids. I was admitted to the hospital 5 weeks before the baby was born prematurely, and my water broke while I was there. I told the doctor that I felt like maybe my water had broken. There's when you're a mom and it's your fourth pregnancy, you could just kind of know these things. And I told him I was concerned that my water broke. And repeatedly I was told, nope, your water didn't break, you're fine. And woke up with a massive infection with sepsis and had to have blood transfusions, and the baby had to be delivered. She lived for 33 days, had heart surgery, pulled through a lot. And then at 33 days, she had an infection again, and we had to remove life support and let her go, and she died in my arms. So that was my fourth baby. And then I was fortunate enough to have two more little boys after her. And she was born in 1998. So she would be, I believe, around 26.
Terry, did you have any?
Well, no, when we talked before, and if you want to share what that grieving process, you weren't allowed to go through that grieving process because of the belief systems held by the church. So if you're comfortable talking
Yes.
about it, then I'm sure that people would like to hear how
Yes.
you were treated and how you had to deal with this on your own.
Thank you so much. Yes, I appreciate you bringing that up, because
So
that
wait
is
just a second. So,
Yeah.
but at the fourth, why? Well, I guess you'll set that up and let us know why you were being mistreated, and then, and let us know, and I'll show.
So, so for the time that I was on bed rest, the women in the church really, they were very good. They pulled together. They helped me. It seems like when people are sick or they're pregnant, there's a lot of help for those people in the church, and they really did help me. When my baby passed away, I wanted to speak at her funeral. It was very important to me that I speak at her funeral. I felt like I carried her for 26 weeks. I knew her best. I wanted to share and talk about my love for her and the feelings that I had. And I was discouraged by my bishop. The bishop is the leader of the ward, and the ward is a group of about 500 people divided up into geographical areas within your city. And the bishop, although he was a kind man, the purpose of the purpose of Mormon funerals is to share the gospel and to spread the word of God. That is the purpose of it. And I wanted my funeral to be about my baby. And I was told that I was not to speak at her funeral. Now, with the balls that I have now, I would have taken myself and not done it at the church, but I didn't have those balls back then. And I also felt like I needed to do what I was told to do. And so at her funeral, Joseph Smith, his name, the prophet Joseph Smith, was mentioned more than my baby. She was briefly addressed. And after that, it went on to the bishop went on to talk about Joseph Smith, the current prophet of the church. They knew that there would be a lot of doctors and nurses who were not members of the church, and a lot of my neighbors who had helped. And it was such a great opportunity for them to share the gospel. And it became just that. It became a missionary opportunity for them, my baby's funeral. And that was so hard for me. Even at the time, I remember feeling so robbed because there she was discounted, and my feelings did not matter at all. And for a mother to not have the opportunity to have to take a child off of life support, have that child take her last breath in your arms, and be robbed the opportunity of sharing your love for your child, I think is disgraceful. And it happens to members of the church in Mormonism all of the time. And we accept it for what it is because we're taught that that's what funerals are. It's not about the celebration of life of that individual. There's a little bit of mention of that person, of course, but it is to share the gospel and to spread the knowledge that we have as members of the church so that others will embrace it and come to the church.
Do you want to share her name with us?
Yes, thank you. Her name is Lauren Bell, and
Oh.
my last name at the time was Henry. So she was Lauren Bell Henry, and she has been a huge part of helping me write this book. I really feel her with me every step of the way. She taught me so much about motherhood and embracing my life and embracing happiness in my life and learning to be compassionate with others. I learned so much about compassion during that time with her, so much about compassion.
Do you on that spiritual journey that you've been on, is she still with you? Do you still feel her, sense her presence? Not the baby anymore. She's now a young woman in that spiritual realm, right?
Right. Yeah, I feel her, and my co-author Sophia Louisa Lee, she's helping me co-author. And when she came to meet me for the first time, we went and got Lauren's box that had her little tiny pacifier and her little diaper, the little teeny diapers and the little dress that I got to dress her in. And we opened it up, and Sophia held her dress, and we just cried together. And I showed Sophia what was said at the funeral. I read it to her, and it was such a release for me to read it and then to be able to say to Lauren, this is not how I choose to honor you. I am setting this aside. I do not choose this. This was not an appropriate honoring of your life. I choose to honor your life. And this woman is going to help me do that. And she said that she felt Lauren's spirit with us. And I really did. And I felt like it was just kind of a rebirth that, you know what, Mom, we get to go tell our story and we get to go teach people about the different things that we've learned in our journey, not based upon what we are told will be hereafter, but based upon what we choose to believe and how we choose to embrace God for ourselves and what we choose to believe God is. And that was just such a beautiful, beautiful opportunity to share with her. And so it's been a huge part of writing this book. Lauren has been a huge part of it.
So was Lauren that aspect that helped you that propelled you through to the life that you have now? That was your turning point, wasn't it?
It was one of the very big turning points in my life. It was one of the very big turning points. And there was a lot that happened during that time. There was the day that Lauren did pass away, out in the waiting room, my oldest son, who was 6 at the time, he choked on a nickel and it occluded his airway just as she was taking her last breaths in my arms. And they called my husband out and he had to go down to the ER. And I remember at that moment just thinking, oh my gosh, is there even a God? Like, what is going on? And this overwhelming thought came to me as she's taking her last breaths in my arms. And it was, do not entertain that thought. This is going to destroy you if you entertain this thought. Don't go there. And so I chose to just focus on the time that I had with her. I bathed her, I dressed her, I held her, I loved her before the coroner came to pick her up. And then every time I would go to set her down, I would have such a hard time because I wanted to just grasp her up again. And I'd put her down and I'd grasp her and I'd put her down and I'd think, this is the last time in this life I'll ever hold this sweet little baby who looked like she was sleeping. Mm-hmm. And the thought came that there was a little boy down in the ER waking up from anesthesia who needed his mom. And I felt like she taught me so much that day, that you go and be the best mom to these kids who need you right now. Go and be the best mom and you will honor my life. And my ability to mother became so much more meaningful that day. She gave me such a greater desire to not only be a mother, but to really embrace it, and to embrace it in the way that I wanted to embrace it, and not necessarily in the way the church wanted me to, but in the way I wanted to, what I wanted to do with my children. She taught me to love them in a way I had never known. And she has taught me countless times about compassion, countless times. I remember the social worker came in right after she died, sweetest little social worker. And she sat with me as I was holding my baby. And she said, Lauren was a cute little freak of nature. And my my initial thought was, what the F did you say? That was my initial thought. And because I had had this experience of, don't entertain that, don't entertain the negativity, don't entertain that anger, I thought her goal was to comfort me. And there are going to be so many people in this process.
Uh-oh.
Sorry about that. There will be so many people who won't even know how to comfort me, and they'll be so afraid of comforting me that they won't. And this was an attempt to comfort me, and that is what I'm going to accept from this. And my baby taught me that. That's not a thought I would have on my own. She was there for me, like teaching me all the way through this. And it was just beautiful. And I feel like throughout my life, she has been there to teach me compassion. I know it is her because I know what her spirit, the presence of her spirit feels like. And that's what I wanted to talk about that day of her funeral, her presence, and that they're still with us. They're still here.
Mm. Thank you for opening and sharing from your heart, because I'm sure that everyone can feel that. And we can feel her. I can feel her just
Thank you.
overseeing this. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, Terry, this kind of giving you like a moment to rest your energy while you go through this. And thank you for sharing. Terry, do you find that is sometimes what it takes? It's amazing that sometimes it seems like facing death is what makes people begin to live more fully. And I know the reason it was almost as if you two were meant to meet. It's so many women that you're able to love and support because you also went through this, Terry. And I don't know, I guess even when we all got to speak that day, it was like the two of you were meant to meet because
Yeah.
you've done this.
Yeah. My experience was a little different. My daughter was 18. But yes, you do feel their presence and their guidance, and it doesn't leave, right? And it's their strength that keeps you going on. In my case, my daughter was always talking to me, and she was guiding me in ways that I knew that it was her, because I never would have thought or done things. She led me to different places and to people in my life that I was, she said, you have to see this person. And it's like, okay. And, meanwhile, that person ended up being one of my best friends. And so you can't deny that aspect of their continuing on, that there is life beyond life, and we only know a little bit of it, and that guidance is what can give us strength.
Yes. Sure.
Yeah.
And
So
I
for
feel your
that,
daughter.
yeah. For that, do you believe that did propel you into making a firm decision to come outside of your Mormon life, or what was it exactly that was the the camel that broke the straw's back? What led to you deciding it's time for me to exit this into a new stage of life? I mean, you got to the bodybuilding and your husband was upset, but somewhere along the way,
Mhm.
you guys were losing the connection and
Yes.
you weren't believing, I guess they would say, believing the hype anymore. Like all these things, you're telling me these things, but these aren't
Yeah.
enough answers. The answers that sometimes we go to church and it's like, well, why is this? And it's like, because it gets to be more like because we said so. Because
Right.
God said so. And it's like,
God said so.
okay, that's not okay.
You
Well,
know,
he told you, he didn't tell me that. What is, what is, where y'all getting the answers from? It becomes this thing where it's like, okay, that's just not enough to stop the floodgates of me from
yeah.
becoming. So
I think that this was a very pivotal moment. I think that during that time, I felt like my testimony of the gospel got stronger. Like I got stronger in the church because I that was the only knowledge of spirituality I had, and I clung to it. But when I returned home from the hospital, I had been gone for 5 weeks, and I had a lot of opioid pain medication at home for that my doctor had prescribed to me. And when I returned home, I realized that my husband had been taking it and he had been self medicating. And in addition to that, he now was getting a prescription from his primary care doctor for 180 tablets a month and sleeping medication. And so I always say that I lost my baby and my husband at the same time. We used to go to bed at night and talk. Here we waited our whole lives to have sex, and it was basically the only thing we had in common. And then we no longer are doing that because he's like every single night. So I'm a young 28-year-old mom with a guy who is now dependent upon narcotics. And he remained on those until the day that I left him. And he told me that he would never come off of them. And he had back pain and he would always be on them. And
why did he
as
have
time
back pain? Do
why
you
he
know?
just had herniated discs. And in the 90s,
Oh,
of course, they just dished it out. And he was
yeah.
part of that opioid epidemic where one of
Wow.
his doctors prescribed him the Percocet, the Ambien, and then they added the Xanax onto it. How the guy never died from that stuff, I'll never know. But this went on for years and years and years. And my big breaking point was we had never had a honeymoon. And I had always asked him, let's have that honeymoon. And after all of this disconnection over many years, so from 1998 until 2000, we went on our trip in 2004. So it was several years that he was on these. And I just said, can we just take a trip and reconnect? Like we don't even have anything in common anymore. And he agreed that we could finally take our honeymoon. And to make a very long story short, one of his friends, they were planning it as a couple trip. So I'd never been on a trip alone with my husband in 18 years. And he wasn't very great at planning anything, nor was he really interested in it. And so he allowed his friends to plan this trip. So 2 weeks before we go on this trip to Hawaii, his friend Dave calls and he says, the room sleeps four comfortably. And I said, uh, are we in the same room with you? And he said, yeah, yeah. And so I said to my husband, that's not going to fly. I want my own space. I've had 6 kids. I want to be able to, I don't want to see Dave in his Mormon underwear. I don't want to see that. I want alone time. I'll never get that image out of my head if I see Dave in his Jesus jammies. And so I just said, I need like to connect with you. And I bought this cute lingerie and he said, yeah, I'll take care of it. I'll take care of it. Well, we got to Hawaii and not only were we sharing a room, but it was a 1 bed, 1 bathroom. Now, mind you, none of us were poor. We all had the money to go. It's a lot of people have criticized me when I've told them this story because they said, well, maybe it's all anybody could afford. No, we were making great money. It's that it didn't matter to my husband. It mattered to me. He didn't care. He just wasn't that into me. And it finally, like I was just over him from age 15. What I realized on that trip is Not only did I see Dave in his Jesus jammies, and also it never left my head, but we had to share a bathroom with them. There was no intimacy, there was no connectiveness. And it was the first time in my life I took myself out on the beach, sat down, and literally had a conversation with myself. It was right when that story came out, that book or the movie, He's Not That Into You. And I said, Susie, he is not that into you. You need to get over it. You need to find the things that will make you happy.
Was he
You are
already planning? I
responsible.
mean, was he just really happy with the drugs, or was he really just
Yes.
plotting on his next wife now?
When you maybe, but when you are addicted to opioids, especially for that long, one of the side effects is apathy. You stop feeling, you don't care about certain things. He changed tremendously, and he became very angry. He started to become even more patriarchal because at that point I wasn't working and I was a stay-at-home mom, and there was this, you're here, I'm here, very much. And he we were there was and I finally just disconnected emotionally. That was when I went through my emotional divorce without realizing it. I decided I was going to go home
Mhm.
from that trip. I was going to work out every day. It was the only thing I had power and control over, and I had no idea I would end up competing. It's just my body started responding so quickly, and it just took off. And then I think when he realized I no longer cared what he thought about me, that's when he started getting nervous. When he realized I no longer cared what he said about me or how he felt about me. And it didn't matter to me anymore whether he liked me or not. It just didn't. So that's when the real transition started, where I started to, okay, I'm going to find the things that make me happy. And of course, bodybuilding exposed me to different people from different backgrounds that I had never been exposed to before. And so it opened up a different world for me, exposure to people outside of the church.
So you started, so that trip, had you started bodybuilding before that, or it was afterwards? Okay.
It was after, yeah.
So
So
that's,
before that, I was like taking the shape of my life, for this trip because I wanted to wear some really hot lingerie and have like this sexual fantasy with my husband. So I was getting ready for the trip with walking and like, but it wasn't until after the trip that I just said, no, I'm committed to this. I'm going to change my body. I'm going to do it for me. I'm going to do something that I enjoy because it had been something that I really loved to do in college. So,
I had to put this up here
I
because
gotta get,
my son taught me about this. It's called the value of something lost. So when you first don't get it, so before you get it, the value is way up here. But
uh-huh.
now once you get it, the value is down here.
Yeah,
But now after you lose it, the value goes back up again. And my son, I was like, why does this
that is
happen? He
great.
was like, this is the value of something lost. So they even tell you in the Art of War, like there's the story about the one guy who was all passionate about the lady, but when he would talk to her, she'd be like, and blow him off. And then when he'd be off to war, she'd be all enthralled
Yeah.
and I don't know why we have to be this way, but definitely it was the value of something lost. When he realized that he'd lost you emotionally, then now he started to pay attention because it really made me wonder what all else he was doing besides just taking pills, that he lost interest in his smoking hot wife. Yeah, like he was had a smoking hot wife. And
He-
it's funny because it can make you start to devalue yourself. Like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? And did you go through that too? Like, and it seemed like you reconciled, but
it's really interesting. Once I hit that point, it was almost like the point of no return. Like it gave me such a sense of power over my happiness to not care that I couldn't believe it. I'm like, I have never been so happy in my life, not caring what he thinks of me. Like it was invigorating. It was enthralling. And I remember after, when I looked like that, he said to me, do you even know what it's like to sleep with a man? It feels like I'm sleeping with a man when I sleep with you. And I said, honestly, I don't know what it's like to sleep with a man.
Maybe we need to try that. We need to try that. Check
I mean, I
it out.
started to
See how
like,
that feels. Right?
I kind of mocked him and stuff. And I would just like laugh at these things that he would try to like hurt my feelings and try to like knock
Manipulate.
me. Yes. And
Yeah.
just knock me down. And I would go and just laugh because it didn't hurt. And that was when you're at that point. I didn't, like I said, I didn't realize I had emotionally divorced him. I just didn't care anymore. And I thought, well, divorce isn't an option. And in the church, he can't get into heaven without me. I can't get into heaven without him.
Whoa.
At this point, I don't care whether I get in heaven or not. But he just needed to have that hold on me because without me, I was his ticket to heaven. He didn't need me because he loved me. He needed me because we made covenants in the temple. And that was the only way he was getting to heaven, to get his other wives.
You know what?
So,
That's a big reason why religion has its place, right? Like you
Mhm.
tell little kids, well, if you don't do this, you're gonna
Yeah.
catch fire. And if you don't do this, it's all, it's all about going to heaven. But I don't know what your idea of heaven was, because for me, I guess they have their good idea of heaven because the men, well, they sound like some other men we know, but they want to get all those versions, and they think that it's like, because I'm gonna last forever. I'm not gonna need Viagra. We're gonna go to heaven. It's gonna be so good. But when I would ask people what was heaven, it sounded really boring because they were talking about we're just gonna
Right.
sing all day, and I was like, I don't want to do that.
I know we were going to have babies all day. We're in our Mormon
God,
heaven. Our
dog.
job is to have babies. Yeah. And,
well,
and I
That's
that
how
love
you
my
know it's
kids.
man-made, because their imagination is so bad. Like your imagination for what heaven is really kind of sucks. It's not that exciting.
It's really not. And,
so
you know,
so fast forwarding then. So what happened to? How did you get excommunicated from the church? Like, how did? What was that? Okay, so you did the bodybuilding, and what was the next steps? And so can he get to heaven now? Does excommunication mean now he's those vows? So now he's free to remarry and
mhm.
go to heaven, to his Mormon heaven. Okay, but you're not going
if
to
he
make
gets
it there.
married, if he gets married in the temple again to someone who's worthy, which he hasn't. He's gotten married, but he hasn't married someone in the church. He married his secretary who cheated on her husband. But here's how I got out. I'm not going to say bad stuff about him. I cheated on my husband with my trainer. Now, that's a big one. So I had never been with anyone but my husband. And when I started training with my trainer, I knew I was very vulnerable. I knew I was very, very vulnerable. And I knew I did not want to cheat on my husband. That is straight going to hell. And I didn't, who wants to cheat on their husband? You don't ever wake up one day and say, I'm going to cheat on my husband. It wasn't what I wanted to do. And so I began searching for a trainer who I was not physically attracted to. So I chose one who was shorter than me. In my opinion, he was not like attractive. I wasn't physically attracted to him. Let's put it that way. I felt safe with him because he was knowledgeable. He helped me in my competitions. As 3 years went on, he became my best friend. He was concerned about my feelings. He was interested in what I believed. He was interested. He never put me down. He didn't shame me in any way. He didn't even shame my religion, but he would ask me things like, why is it so important for you to wear that crazy underwear? Do you really think it's going to save you? I mean, do you really think it's going to protect you? And I would tell him, yeah, I made these covenants. And he's like, if I wanted to rip those off you right now, there would be no protection. I could rip those right off of you. And I felt like, oh my gosh, this is disgraceful. Like to even start thinking differently or he used the term evolving. Sometimes in life we evolve and we start to think of different things. And he said, I see you evolving because you're kind of moving out of that. And I did start thinking of yes, I wore those. And I got kicked off TikTok for posting it. And now everybody posts it on TikTok. Everybody. But I posted it because now these are sacred. These are things that you are required to wear under your clothes every day of your life, whether it's 115 degrees outside, whether night and day. Now, the Mormons are a lot more lenient on it now, but I used to get called in my bishop's office and questioned whether I was wearing these night or day because I would not wear them to the gym. I refused. And so, anyway, back to me cheating on him, I ended up having an affair with my trainer and I felt awful about it. And so, I ended up going to my counselor. She was also Mormon. She told me because my covenants were with God, I would need to obviously confess to the bishop. But she said, I would definitely have to tell my husband because my covenants were to my husband. And when I told him, I mean, obviously, I thought for sure he was going to kill me. I mean, he just, his hands went around my neck. He didn't choke me out, but you could just see the rage. And I get it. This is not something anyone is proud of. And this is not something anybody wants to tell their spouse. But I really felt so much guilt. I felt like I was going to hell. I felt like my life was over. I felt like I'd ruined my family. I felt like, I mean, there were thoughts of, I don't even want to live anymore. I mean, this is like the worst thing I could possibly do. I don't want to do it again. I want to repent. I want to make it better. What it allowed was this discrepancy with me and my husband to go like this, because he now could do anything he wanted. And it was this huge, I'm here, my sins are here, you're here, don't forget what you've done. He wanted to keep me there, and he wanted to remind me, and he wanted to, it allowed him to exert even more control over me. Yep.
Well, it was a chasm, and it could, like, now he can actually put you in hell right now.
Yeah, it allowed him to even more so ignore the problems that he was having. I mean, opioid addiction, big deal. My doctor prescribes it. What's your problem, Susie? I mean, I'd find the guy in the front yard asleep, watering the grass, and I'd have to pick him up and carry him into the house because the guy would fall asleep on the sofa with ice cream melted down his crotch. How many men can fall asleep with ice cream on their nuts? I mean, he could.
And not ice cream with nuts, but
Yeah.
ice cream with
I
nuts.
mean,
Okay.
he's eating Ben and Jerry's every night and it's melting down his crotch. And he wakes up at 5 a.m. clueless because he's drugged out every night. So again, it was, I don't have to fix my problems because Susie's here. Her problems. I mean, I can do anything I want. And it allowed him to do that. And that's exactly what he started to do was open private businesses, start funneling money, preparing that in the event I ever left him, I would be left with nothing. And that's what he did.
Wow. I mean, that's how self-righteousness works, is people, they and that's why our goal is really to begin to focus on ourselves, working on ourselves, adjusting our own issues and attitudes, because, oh my goodness, you got so much room to fail and be nasty if all you're doing is looking outside at what everybody else does, and
Right.
then saying what I did
Yeah.
was not such a big deal, because we're always, and then it just makes us this miserable, crusty person on the inside. So
Right.
it just became, yeah.
And I bet, like, people, there must have been, and you're so busy in your own life that you probably can step back now and say, yeah, there's probably, 90% of the people that you associated with were having similar problems, but they just hide behind what they have to do, right? And they don't have the courage, because it took a lot of courage for you to step out and do those things. So within the circle that you were a part of, I'm sure that there were other women who may have been of course they were judging you, but secretly they were envying you that you were able to make that, even though it wasn't great to be thrown out, but you still were able to escape that wheel.
I think that we can never change what we don't acknowledge. And I didn't want to be a cheater. You know, you always hear this, once a cheater, always a cheater. Well, I believe that if what you do is cheat and hide, I do believe that.
Mhm.
But I did not want to be a cheater. And I had to start evaluating, okay, why did I do this? And how am I going to make changes? And what I realized is that my marriage was terrible. And what I realized is I needed to get out, and I needed to be, if I was ever going to be in a relationship again, it needed to be a healthy one. And I needed to be in a position, because I was left with very little financially after the divorce. It was, I need to be able to take care of myself so that I don't rely upon anyone else, so that I never feel stuck again. Because without knowing it, in the back of my mind, I felt stuck just like my mom. And I was vulnerable because I was emotionally divorced. And I don't ever want to be in that position again where I'm in a loveless relationship. So I made a promise to myself that I'm never going to be in a loveless relationship. I'm never going to be with somebody because I have to be. And I'm never going to do it again, because I would leave before I would ever do that again. Because what it did to my soul, and knowing with myself that ugly, shameful secret, that's not the kind of person I want to be. I want to be an honest person. And I was not being honest with myself when I was having an affair. I learned a lot about myself. I think that the person I had an affair with taught me a lot, but I didn't leave my husband for him, because I knew that everything that we did was done in secrecy and dishonesty. And I didn't want to go into another relationship without working on what I needed to work on myself, and being completely honest with myself moving forward. And so, yeah.
And sometimes those things happen to expose the problem so that you can't hide from it anymore, right?
Right.
Like this is irrevocable now.
Yeah.
It's out here. But I'm also
Yeah.
thinking too that, as you know, and when we're in communities of people where these things happen to you, everyone can get together and point the finger, like
Mhm.
Terry is saying, and it just
Yes.
helps distract them from, ooh, I hadn't slept with my
Yeah.
husband in a year.
Yeah.
Ooh, my
And
husband,
Terry, I think
my
that
wife is drunk
I
or whatever.
that was such a profound thing too that you're both saying, because that when I got called into my church court, there weren't any women there. There were 4 men sitting around a table, basically asking me anything they wanted in order for me to be
Ooh,
forgiven
wow.
of my sins. And the questions were so awful. And just like you said, Terry, all I could think about after it was over was, these men are hiding things. These men are not honest men. These men would never have the balls to do what I'm doing, knowing that they're going to lose everything. These men are hiding, because these are their questions. How many times did you have sex?
They're
Was it,
fantasizing, probably.
oh, yeah. Was it oral, anal, or vaginal? Are you still having sex? Um, did you, I mean, it was like, are you kidding me right now? And I remember asking them, why do these questions need to be asked? And their response was, we need to be able to determine the correct discipline for you. And we can only determine that discipline if we know these details. I call baloney. I call baloney. And
Well, the
so,
thing about them is, in their little circle, in their little councils, because I speak to another friends of mine that are like of another faith, and I was like, you do know that when the leaders go out to other places, they go to strip clubs and they have prostitutes, like they do it, right?
they
So
do.
these same people that were sitting there, they they know each other's dirt, but the thing is they keep each other's secret because we got dirt on each other. And so here it is, as you come in and they get to fillet you and open
Mhm.
you up and lay you all your dirty secrets out. But
I think I scared them.
those
I
councils, they know each other. They know what they do.
agree. I,
Yeah, they know.
wholeheartedly.
Why did you scare them?
I think I scared them because it was something that they had to look inward and think, is this something I would do? Is this something I should do if I truly believe that the church is true and that I must confess my sins? Because in order for people to maintain their status in the church, not every, I'm sure there are a lot of people that are very, very good in the church,
Yeah.
very good. But for those who have big, big secrets like I did, the big ones, they don't they don't want to tell, because if they tell, their whole life changes. And I did have many women come up to me after it happened, and there were women who told me they were having affairs, and they said,
Right.
but I would never do what you did. To see your family destroyed, I would never do it. And my, of course, my recommendation to them when they asked for my advice was, leave your marriage. Your marriage isn't
Yeah,
happy.
why continue to cheat? Just get
Leave your
out.
marriage.
You know it's not
And
working.
and we also feel like crap about ourselves, whether we're religious or not. How can you be so dishonest in a relationship and feel good about yourself? I mean, it took me probably 3 years to actually like myself again after what I did. It took me a long time to be able to look in the mirror and go, Susie, you're a good person. You try, because it wounded my soul to do those things and make those mistakes. It takes a long time to get our self-worth back after we are so dishonest.
Yeah.
So now, having gone through that period, and you said that transition period, how did you connect, um, to that spiritual aspect of yourself and to God, and to, you had a belief system. Just because you're kicked out of the church now,
Yeah.
you just don't stop believing, right?
Yeah.
But I'm sure that you've deconstructed a lot of that belief system. But how did you do that? Like, how did you have help? Did you have counseling with it? What was that process like for you?
I really didn't have help, because back then, like, very few people were leaving the church. I know that they have the term now, deconstruct. We didn't have that back then. I didn't know what was going on. But I will tell you, when I left the council that day after I was told that I was excommunicated, I walked out in the hall and I saw this picture of Jesus, of course, in the hallway. And I had always been told that I would lose the Holy Ghost, which we are given to guide us. And it's the still small voice, and that we would lose it if we were ever excommunicated. We would lose all our blessings. I walked out into the hallway and I saw this beautiful picture of Jesus, and I looked at him and I thought, you still love me. You still love me, and you're proud of me, because this is the first step. You're proud of me, and I still feel you. And I thought, that is not the Holy Ghost. They didn't take anything away from me. This is my intuition. And so that Sunday, I walked into church just like it never happened. Because on the front of a Mormon church, it will say visitors welcome. And I thought, well, I'm a visitor now. And this is what I've believed my whole life. And they're not gonna stop me from worshiping. And so I walked in, and the men on the stage were just, I could see them whispering, like, what the hell is she doing here? Get her out, get that scarlet letter out. But as time went on, I didn't want to go to the church anymore. I There was a period of time where I did not believe in God at all, and I wasn't angry, but I didn't understand it. I think the patriarchy stuff just really affected me in a negative way, and I hated to think of God as a man. And so it took me a while to decide what my own spirituality was, and I found it in nature. And I think of Mother Earth as my higher being. I still don't know who my higher being is. I still don't know, but I love to listen to what other people's interpretation of what their higher being is. It is beautiful to me. It is interesting to me. I I know that there's a higher being, And I'm okay with not knowing exactly what that is. I know that I'm connected to my daughter Lauren. I know I'm connected to my ancestors. I know that the ancestors who gave their lives for the religion that I walked away from, I feel like they would be proud of me because they stood so firmly in what they believed, and I am too. And I think that rather than them being disappointed, because that was always held over my head too, is what would your ancestors who gave their lives for this think with you walking away? Well, I think that they believed it with every fiber of their being, just like I did, until I didn't. And now I believe in kindness and compassion and love. And I believe in treating people with respect. And I believe in full honesty. And I can say that I am. And that gives me a lot of strength and it gives me hope and it gives me my spirituality in connecting to whatever that higher being is. I just hold space in knowing that there is a God in some form. There is a higher power. And I love that it's not the celestial kingdom with many, many wives and having babies forever and ever and ever. I love that it is. I believe that whatever knowledge that we gain in this life and whatever understanding of human connection we gain in this life, I believe that whether we are reincarnated into another body or however it goes, we get to take that with us. And that's why I love learning, is that whatever I learn in this life and whatever values I acquire that make me a better person, I carry that into the next life. And that makes me so happy.
So when is this book coming out? Let's put
Yay!
this back up. I'm gonna put the
We're
banner up there, the name of the book.
Thank you. We're planning April next month. So the final editing is being done right now. It's called A Piece of Me, leaving Mormonism, marriage, medicine, and men, and the four M's. And it's exciting. It talks about all the things that I learned as a new mom coming out and dating really for the first time in my life, and in Las Vegas, being a mother of 5 living kids and dealing with the what I found is that there was a lot of judgment, not only in my church but in the world, coming out and not knowing what normal people learned in their 20s, trying to figure out men and drinking. I'd never drank before, trying to figure out all those things in my 40s with 5 kids. So there was a lot of judgment and a lot of frowning upon my behavior. And one of the things that I really learned was the love of my children. I feel like after the divorce, they were very, very angry with me. They were very upset with me with good reason. There was a lot of embarrassment because of the things that I had done. And I was watching, it was a movie with Rick Springfield and Meryl Streep. And I can't remember the name of it, but Rick Springfield, the mother, she Meryl Streep, she was a musician and kind of a little bit out there for her kids, and they were really embarrassed by her. And she said, "My kids don't love me, they don't respect me." And Rick Springfield says to her, "Your children's job is not to love you. Your job is to love your children." Ricky and the Clash, that's what it was. Your job is to love your children. And I thought, oh my God, it was almost like Lauren was speaking to me again. Mom, don't forget to love your children. Give them everything. And I thought, if my children never love me, if they never do love me again, I will be okay knowing that I love them. I will give them all of my love. And they have um, every reason to be angry with me or upset with me, and I will hold space for them with that, but I will love my children no matter what. And it was very empowering for me, and the relationship I have with my children is beautiful. It is amazing. I have 5 adult children. The youngest is 21, the oldest is 30. Let's see, he was born in 91, 32. um, it's incredible. My children have taught me so much about love and compassion, and they mean the world to me. I never thought I could have such an incredible relationship with my children, because in the church I was told if I ever walked away I'd lose all of it. And I have done nothing but gain.
Yeah.
Thank
Well,
you.
I'm super grateful that you have the courage. I mean, you have like a phenomenal story, a phenomenal life. I can't imagine what more is going to be in the pages of that book, but I'm just encouraging
A lot
everybody
more.
oh, that this is
It's
going to be
it's juicy.
amazing. Yeah. I don't even know
Oh,
what to say that you are. Like, you're just phenomenal. And then you're just like,
oh,
wow,
thank
you did
you.
what? Like,
Oh,
no, God
you are
just
both
wants,
wonderful. I am so, so thankful to have met you
yeah,
last month. I was so excited to talk with both of you. You're so incredible and you have so much wisdom to impart. And I just feel honored to have had this time with you today. I think you're just
yeah,
incredible, amazing
I
women. Thank you for
know.
what you do.
We need to plan something, y'all. Like,
Yes.
it's like we just need to get all our super friends together. Like, wow, we are just
Yes.
fun. It's
Well,
amazing.
it's so you're so authentic and honest in who you are, and you're not hiding behind anything. And I think in our world today, there's so much in inauthenticity. Like people, they're not who they say they are. They pretend, they hide behind something, but you are just who you are, and you are not shy in expressing the journey that you've gone through, and that's very inspiring. And it helps people, it helps people with their own journey, because a lot of times people don't feel they have challenges, and they feel that they don't have the strength. But when you step up and you say, this is what I've gone through, and your whole journey with your loss of your child, and your husband's addictions and all that, it helps all of us in realizing that yeah, you step one foot in front of the other, and you just live each moment, and you will make it through it. And once you get through that mud puddle, you're not looking back anymore.
Yeah.
It's what made you who you are now, but it propels you forward. And just don't get stuck in that mud. Just don't stay there and dwell in it. Just
Right.
keep moving on. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah,
That's
very well
what
said.
I told my son. I said, you do what those movie stars do. You make your apology and you walk in the door like nothing happened. I told my son that one time at school. I was like, you just hold your head up like you don't know what's going on.
Good. And there was something too that you said that I thought my husband would say to me after the big mistake, the big one. He said, Susie, if people really knew who you were, they wouldn't like you at all. And
Oh,
that
he
caused
tried his hardest.
yeah, it caused a lot of inward reflection. And I
Mhm.
started to think they might not like me. And you know what? We've all made mistakes, and I'm not happy about this one. And there will be people who don't like me. And we have to become comfortable with people not liking us. And I think Brene Brown does an incredible work with shame research. That shame, like you're talking about, Terry, that we have, if people really knew this or they knew that, we all have made mistakes. Some of us have done really big ones, like myself. And they wouldn't call it a mistake. They would call it, like, I've been called some really bad things online by people when I've expressed what I've done. And
Oh,
people, what it tells you when someone shames you is there's a lot of shame in there for them, and they're taking that shame that they feel within themselves out on you. And so there will be people who maybe don't like us, but we should never be fearful of people not liking us if they really knew who we were, because not everybody's going to like us, and it's okay. We
Mhm.
still have value.
and they might not be worth knowing. I kind of think like, good for you. Let me repel you as quickly as possible. That way I don't got to waste my time, because the
Exactly.
sooner you know who
Good
I am and
point.
the sooner you make up your mind, the sooner you can get the hell away from me. If you're not for me, because it's all or
Bye.
nothing. I'm good. I'm good. I
Exactly.
just told somebody that story. I was around a person and they used to say, I could ask 9 out of 10 people and they would say something different. It was a guy. And I said, well, go fuck all 9 of them then.
That is awesome.
It sounds
Exactly.
like you're interested. It sounds like, like you got something else going on. If you can do better, please
By
feel
all
free.
means.
By all means. Get to
That is
step in. And I've had
wonderful.
people tell me, like, well, why did you tell them? I tell people who I am because I want them to know now
Right. Right.
sooner than later. Why waste
Yeah.
time? Why
Agreed.
waste time? That's right.
Every,
That's what George
I,
Jefferson used to say. Let the doorknob hit you where the good Lord split you. See, like, so anyway, that's the kind of ruckus we got going on over here. So we love it.
oh, well, thank you so much.
Thank you. We enjoyed you, everybody. And time is precious. Walk into your authenticity. Allie, Jax, Carrie, Dom, you all. Thank you for everybody who hit the buttons. I know my sister-in-law's in there and she didn't hit the button. You
Oh,
didn't tell us you were in here, but that's okay. You guys just like, share, subscribe. We got to get the message out about this book and this whole thing
thank
about
you.
deconstruction and helping people to live the lives they're meant to
Yeah.
live, understand their birthright. God loves you, and you don't honestly have to do anything to earn that. You are at one with the Creator. He is your father, no matter what you think. Your father, mother,
Mhm.
father. He's the source, and source loves you. So this is something we have to redeem. Is this birthright that we have, that we deserve to be happy, beautiful, sexual,
Sexual.
if we choose to be, then we deserve to enjoy this time in our bodies. Is safe for us to be in our bodies, and that's what we're supposed to have, and that's a part of what you're going to do with your movement, with your book, to let people know it's okay to be seen.
Yeah.
So, one more question. Are you still
Yes.
bodybuilding?
No, I'm not bodybuilding. I work out every day, and I enjoy
Ooh.
it. But I also enjoy food. I enjoy. I have my own practice that I opened that I just am absolutely loving. So it's a new phase for me in my life. That served its purpose, and I loved it. And the things that I learned from bodybuilding, I carry with me. I still eat really well. Like I said, I still work out every day. Not as heavy because I've had a couple of back surgeries, so not as heavy, but just taking the parts of every phase of my life and incorporating it into the next phase and continuing to grow with the new phase. And so this is my new phase, my practice and the book. And yeah.
And we've had that book on the bottom of the screen.
Oh, thank you.
So, and we put it in the quotes. And as soon as we get the link for the book, when it comes out, we'll post it again and we'll continue to
Thank
share
you.
it. And we'll get together in the future. Maybe next time we'll get together with you and Sophia Louisa.
Yeah.
And we had a wonderful talk. And yeah, it was phenomenal talking to her. And
She's awesome. I love her.
it's amazing how people walk in. And I was looking for someone. I said, I want to do highly controlling religion. And then me and her end up talking, and she was like, oh, I got somebody. And so then we found you. So it was really cool. It's really cool the way life works. I enjoy the synchronicities. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Well, bye everybody out there.
Thank you so much, Erica and Terry. It was so wonderful to see you again. And thank you for all you do.
Thank
Thanks.
you.